somewhere. But somewhere in one of these conversations, I said to a friend, I don't know what a Chicago artist is, but I don't want to be reduced to one. And he said, that's awesome, you have to say that. And so I've said it, but I don't now know if I actually support it anymore. But in the thought process, like I guess I kept coming back to how does being a Chicago artist, being labeled a Chicago artist, help you in any way? Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it does. But I don't want to define it in the negative. I don't want to define it as you're an artist who didn't go to New York or you're an artist who didn't go to LA. So I kept trying to think of it as how would a Chicago artist be different or the same than a Seattle artist or a San Francisco artist or a Kansas City artist, somebody who doesn't live sort of in one of the major art capitals, but in sort of an equivalent city. And I don't know that I have an answer for that yet, but I don't know if that's, I feel like the same conversation could be happening in one of those other cities. I feel like in an attempt to define or figure out the commonality between the people that I look at that are doing art in Chicago, I end up sort of having to try and create a net like so broad that it catches everyone or most people that it almost becomes meaningless. Like to try and say like, well, how is Carrie Gundersdorf the same as Temporary Services? Like, what do they have in common? Mm-hmm. And so I feel like it becomes really sort of impossible. But I do think there are I see a couple of different strains of sort of the more popular or the more common methodologies and aesthetics. But then trying to link those together is there's a lot of stuff going on in abstract painting in Chicago right now. There's a lot of stuff going on in the sort of beyond green sort of material exchange. But like, how do you connect, painters that showing at places like Shane Campbell with that sort of work? And is there a common thread that connects all of it? So I'm not sure that I can. But the more I think about this, the more I actually become really in favor of, or on a sort of theoretical level of the idea of regionalism. Like I'm actually starting to become like, I really like the idea of regionalism, especially as sort of a tactic against the sort of homogeneous globalization, biennial, like which sort of lacks sort of sight in a way, like in that you get sort of like the international curators that I feel like bring in all of their same friends, no matter if they're in, I don't know, some city in Germany or some city in Central America, that it ends up sort of, and so I like regionalism on a sort of level like that, except that I don't know that it's really possible anymore, because of information technology, and that like, and predominantly in our awareness of what's going on in the world, and that for me, many of my favorite artists may be living in Mexico City or Amsterdam Portland or someplace, and I feel like that the dialogue that I think that I want my work to be having is not necessarily with people in Chicago, but it's with people other places, and not that they would necessarily be aware of it at all, but the people that I feel like I'm responding to, and so I think that regionalism maybe is sort of outdated as or not really feasible anymore, and maybe it becomes sort of scene-oriented or stylistically oriented, but dispersed. But so yeah, I guess I don't know that I've done anything other than just sort of reiterate like a lot of what your questions are, except to say that I don't know right now that I have an answer, but I look forward to this sort of panel trying to maybe hash out how it is that we would define that term, and I will stop rambling there.
Before we go, pass this down to you.
Am I on?
Are you going
Yes,
to Elizabeth?
you're on. Yeah, you're on.
Okay, I'm on. Well, first I'd like to thank Hamza and Society for having me. It's an honor to be part of this conversation and on a panel with such a distinguished group of people. So I'm really excited to be here and to be participating in this conversation. I think what I'm going to sort of deal with is the should I stay or should I go issue, and whether or not Chicago is a viable place in which to be an artist, and how Three Walls fits into that question. You mentioned the hemorrhaging of talent around the closing of alternative art spaces, so I think that when Three Walls was formed, it sort of was trying to respond to that issue. So I'll just start out talking about Three Walls and our programs and how they fit into the Chicago cultural ecology, because the Chicago question is a really big one, so I think that by talking about it through this specific lens, you can sort of see our vantage point as an alternative art space. So for those of you who don't know, Three Walls was founded 5 years ago by Jonathan Rhodes, Shannon Stratton, Jeff M. Ward, and Sonia Yoon. I am currently the executive director, and I run the space with, Shannon Stratton, the director and chief curator. When Three Walls was started, it was primarily as a residency program, but it was conceived in a way that was really Chicago-centered. The idea was that there's a really vibrant art community here, and that it's a major city, and that they should be bringing in artists in a way that has bilateral effects. So the artists who come in here see what's going on, get excited by it, invigorated by it, and when they leave can bring that out to the world, and the Chicago community is invigorated by new ideas and fresh ideas by the resident artists. So there was a lot of public programming built around it to connect the community. So even though it was about bringing artists who didn't live and work here to Chicago, it was really about Chicago. But all the while, that continued on for about 4 years pretty successfully as the major sort of feature of the programming. But the whole time I think there were discussions about how to give more direct support to Chicago artists living and working here. While they exhibited through Three Walls, there wasn't really a formalized program through which they could exhibit. I think it's an interesting point to make that most of the founders were graduates of the School of the Art Institute, so they weren't necessarily born and raised in Chicago, but when they came here, they found a community that they thought was interesting, creative, wanted to invest in, wanted to build upon. And they volunteered their time for a very long time to do that. So I think that, that's evidence of the fact that there's something really interesting and exciting happening here. So when another space in the building opened up in 119 North Peoria in the summer of 2007, Shannon had the idea to launch what's called the Solo Project. And that offers shows to Chicago, to only Chicago area artists, to open up an opportunity in the community in a way that makes Chicago a viable place to stay and have a career. So it's an opportunity, a professional exhibition opportunity. So in order to achieve this, it wasn't just about giving these opportunities, but how do you create a procedure through which people apply and people are admitted into this program that sort of furthers the mission of the organization. And I think that Three Walls has always been focused on artist careers and how to develop an artist career. So the application process actually became a way in which to just further the mission. Even if you didn't get an exhibition, your work was exposed to a panel of 15 people who would review these applications, and these people are curators, artists themselves, art historians, critics. So even if you don't end up with a show at the end of the day, your work has been exposed and has reached like a new level of visibility. And so the methodology of the program was designed in such a way, like very carefully, to make more opportunities happen, to put work of artists under the people's noses who might be able to take it and do something with it. And I think it's also important, the application process is also important because it gives all artists access to an exhibition opportunity. It's not about